Hey guys, what is going on? Spencer Brothers here from Sterling Home Inspection, and while I got you guys here today, I just wanted to show you one of the common misconceptions that we see when we are inspecting decks. And I'm standing in front of one today that was just inspected, and something was immediately brought to my attention as I saw this deck, and I wanted to share it with you guys. So as we see here, what we expect when we look at a stairwell such as this is for there to be balusters that connect from the top of the handrail down to the bottom. In this particular case, we see absolutely no balusters at all, except for the main one right there in the middle and the one down here at the very bottom, which is actually a post and not a baluster. So these missing balusters present a problem in that if a child or a small animal is coming down the stairs hazardly, they have the potential seriously to fall through those stairs. That can cause serious injury, especially considering that we're up, it looks like at least a story from the top of the deck down to the ground, which is, as you can see, concrete. Bad news. So the thing is, we want on these stairs to have balusters on the rail such that we cannot pass a 4 3/8 inch sphere in between each of these balusters. This protects us and protects everyone who comes up and down our stairs, and ensures that we have no injuries and that we're protecting ourselves to the best of our ability. So it's extremely important, and this is not something that you see common nowadays. This was an older deck, admittedly, and so this is one of the problems that as soon as you see it on an inspection, it immediately stands out to you, simply because it's so out of the ordinary. But these things still do happen, so that's one of the things that I wanted to make mention of. If ever you see this, you want to immediately get this replaced, and this is simple. The balusters can just be added directly on to the side on the inside from a construction standpoint, so they can simply be nailed down. That presents a rather economical way to do it, to ensure that safety is also met at the same time. So as far as the height of the rail, it seems to meet what you would consider the code on these. It's at least 36 inches high, so it does its job as far as protecting if you were to fall into it, especially an adult. But if you were a smaller child, it would be easy to go through one of those. I know personally I have a 1.5-year-old, and he would easily be able to go under or go through, kind of whichever he chose. So that's the reason that we want to protect ourselves there. So if we will look up at the actual deck itself, what we will notice is that these have balusters, and these balusters appear to be properly spaced. So basically what we would want is to see those same balusters going down the side of the stairs as well, offering that same level of protection. Alright guys, I'm back here on the roof this afternoon, and while I won't typically bring a phone and film with me on top of a roof, I do think it's important, while I am up here today and I have a couple of people on the ground kind of ensuring my safety, that I go ahead and give you guys a quick tour of what we look at when we look at a roof structure. So as we come up here and we're examining the tiles and the shingles, we're looking to see that there's absolutely no gaps in between any of these. That's an indication that there may be some aging among the shingles. We're also ensuring that the granular is not lost, which is also another sign of indication. These are all completely sealed. As you can see, I can't pull these up, I can't move these at all. That's a very good sign. If I can't move them, that means water is not going to be able to get into them easily. All right, here's another interesting thing that you'll often see on top of a roof, and I get a lot of questions about this. This is actually a vent, and it's indicated by these ridges right here. You can see that there's a gap, and it is actually connected to the attic down there. So these are actually vents. So as air flows up through the soffit vents on the side of the house, it exits through the top of these vents at the top of the roof. So ensuring that these are open and ensuring that there's plenty of airflow coming through these, it guarantees that we have proper flow through our attic, which is extremely important to ensure that ventilation is happening as it's supposed to. In the event that this was blocked, you would potentially start to see problems with the shingles, as they could potentially overheat, and that's always a bad deal there, to have those happen on the roof, simply because of poor ventilation. So that's one thing that we want to make sure, is that when we have vents at the top of the roof, known as ridge vents, that they do their job and that they are properly and adequately maintained. Alright, so this is always interesting. Anytime you look up on a roof, you always see what looks to be like pipes protruding from the roof, and actually what these are what's known as a vent. The plumbing vent prevents the trap from being siphoned. And so, since every plumbing fixture has a trap, which serves to prevent the sewer gases from coming into the home, when the water drains through the plumbing fixture, it can be enough to create a siphon, and ultimately, that's what these vents are aiming to protect. Alright guys, now here's one of the most interesting parts of a roof inspection. It's when we're able to come over here and actually inspect the chimney. And so a couple of the things that we want to make sure when we're inspecting the chimney is that the brick and the mortar appear to be in good condition. In this particular case, what we can see on both sides is that the brick has deteriorated along with the mortar. This presents us with a couple of problems here. It means that water has caused this brick to deteriorate to a degree that could ultimately lead to collapse of the chimney if left in this state to continue over time. What you see here is a chimney cover. This is very good. We want to make sure that these are on our chimneys to some degree or another one. This one is pretty large. But what this actually does is prevent water from coming down into the flue pipe, which is extremely important. One thing to keep in mind is that the year that the house is built is going to determine a lot of what went into it, and kind of the code that it was being followed as it was being built. And so one thing that I want to point your attention to is that if we actually take a look inside of the cap here, and we're able to see the flue pipe as it extends, and it appears to be roughly even with the mortar that's lining the top of the chimney. Now, what's important is that in this particular case, the flue pipe does not extend above the top of the chimney, which is typical on modern day roofs. So what we want to see is a 2-inch projection from the top. So we would like to see at least 2 inches coming up and above the base level here. One of the reasons that we want to ensure this is simply to prevent things from going into the flue pipe. It's extremely important to prevent anything from coming into the flue pipe that might cause damage. Ultimately, anything and everything over time that leads into that pipe is going to be heated up to a very, very high degree. So anything that we can prevent from coming in there is ideal. What we have here is just a closer look at some of the deterioration that has occurred. You can see that the bricks are essentially just hanging on. And so if you can get a closer look here, what we can actually see is a lot of water deterioration. And you can tell based on the color of the brick, there's been some change. Definitely not what we want to see on a roof, nor a chimney. All right, so what we have here is another vent. This one right here actually allows for air not only to exit through the top of the ridge vents, as you're able to see, but through the side right here. So one thing that the owner of the home mentioned was that at times they were able to hear what sounded like squirrels in the attic, and this seems to be exactly what you would expect to find, because it seems that we have had something, very likely a squirrel, open one of those vents up, which is very easy for them to do. And then if you're able to see in there, actually claw through what appears to be a piece of wire to get in there. So they're able to come and go as they please, especially as the weather gets cold. They're going to be taking shelter in there, trying to stay as warm as they can. And so it's extremely important to make sure that we prevent rodents from coming in the attic. And this is one of the ways that we do that, by fixing these and making these repairs as soon as we note that there's a problem. Walking the roof is extremely important. We want to make sure that we get on as many roofs as we possibly can. And the only thing that we are concerned of when we step up here is our own safety, and to ensure that we are not missing anything that could potentially cause the buyer to make a decision with incorrect information. So we're going to walk it, and we've walked it today, every inch of it that we possibly can. We get near the edge. We make sure that the gutters are clear. We make sure that everything tends to be in proper working order, so that we can do the best that we can to guarantee that the roof is in the condition that we described. One thing that we often see is water heaters that are covered up. And so in this particular case, what we want to see is accessible space around the water heater and in front of the electrical panel. And in this particular case, both seem to be covered. So there is a small visible walk space in between these. So we will get in there and we will take a look at these things at a closer angle. But one thing that we want to keep in mind is that these things do need space, not only to be operated on effectively at times, but also to prevent danger. If these things do tend to spark with nearby things, they can easily catch fire. In particular case for the hot water heater here, the temperature pressure relief valve is extremely important to make sure that when a temperature is reached in excess of what the heater can withhold and maintain, that it's able to vent. And the same thing with the pressure. The pressure that builds up in this system can explode and ultimately go straight through the top of the house. These things have been known to do that. So if you're on YouTube, yeah, punch that in and go take a look, because that's real life. So we want to make sure that there's nothing around that damage can be caused to. I wanted to point this out to you guys because the homeowner asked me about this just briefly, just a simple question as far as what this was in particular. And so just to kind of bring some clarification, just in case you guys are wondering as well, this is actually the water inlet. This is where the water enters the house. This is actually a pressure regulator to ensure that water is distributed at the correct pressure. And so as we follow it down, this branch leads out actually to a hose bib or a hose pipe. And then coming down here is where the main water shutoff is. So this is one of the things that we are required to identify on an inspection, is where we can shut water off. So if we are to close this here, we're going to shut water off to the entire house. And so this is where it's coming in right here, and you can see that this is sealed up nice and tight. And so it appears that it comes up past our main water shutoff, goes through our pressure regulator, goes up to the top, and then carries its way all the way over to the other side, at which case it is distributed to the hot water heater and all the other things that require water throughout the house, at which point it is distributed to every room and to every level.